So we're continuing on with our discussion of wireless security, and we've talked about all the bad, evil people out there that want to crack into our network and steal all of our corporate data or non-corporate data or any data at all, really. So how can we protect against those people? Well, wireless LAN security has two basic components. We're talking about authentication and encryption. Authentication ensures that you are talking to the access point that you think you're talking to, and that the access point is actually talking to your client. So that hopefully, unless that authentication key gets out, you're not susceptible to a man-in-the-middle attack, where you're associating with someone's computer or a rogue access point, and they're intercepting all of the data before passing it along to the actual access point. Encryption guards against that eventuality by encrypting the data or scrambling it as it goes over the air, so that even if the authentication is broken, the encryption is still there so that the data can't easily be gotten at. The wireless security standards discussed in this slide deck and in this video cover both authentication and encryption. Now, these standards come from the IEEE and the Wi-Fi Alliance, and some vendors obviously have proprietary solutions. Cisco had a proprietary solution between WEP and WPA. And around the same time, I remember seeing proprietary security solutions from Dell and Motorola. However, for the purposes of this video, we'll only be discussing standards that are standard and not proprietary. So we'll start off with the Open Network, and it's not really a wireless security standard, but we do need to cover it just because there are a few of these out there. Open Network basically has no security settings and no encryption. And you might think to yourself, well, who in the world would use an open network with no security and no encryption? Well, you use them for public Wi-Fi access, like at hotels and coffee shops and restaurants and so on and so forth. Obviously, in situations like that, you don't want to have to worry about distributing a security key or setting up logins for each user that happens to walk into your restaurant. You just open up the network, you insulate it from your production network if you have a production network, and just let the users go out and do whatever they want to for the most part. In an open network, the SSID is broadcast and is available for anyone to connect to. There's no filtering or authentication or anything like that going on the security side. However, the downside of this is with the right tools, a malicious user can capture all of your network traffic and examine the contents. And it's for this reason that any serious security expert will tell you don't log into websites using non-HTTPS or non-encrypted means when you're on a public wireless network. And again, if you'll go back to some of the Wireshark captures we've done, Telnet is not encrypted, FTP is not encrypted, plain HTTP is not encrypted, so any of that could be grabbed right off the wire off of an open network. So doing that is generally a bad idea unless you're using some type of encryption, some type of VPN, so on and so forth. Beyond having the right tools to capture the traffic, a malicious user could just set up a rogue access point, trick everybody into associating with that access point, and then they see all the data as it flows across the wireless network, and they can mine that for interesting usernames and passwords and so on and so forth. So unless you really want everyone to come in and use your network, you don't need to set up an open security network. So next we'll talk about the Wired Equivalent Privacy, or the WEP protocol. In modern times, this is just marginally better than an open wireless network. It was first introduced by the IEEE in 1999. WEP uses a 40-bit encryption key with a 24-bit initialization vector. With WEP, the encryption keys are statically defined between the access point and the client. So you set up an access point with a certain encryption key, you go to your client, you give that same key to the client, and that's what they use to encrypt the data with. With WEP, these encryption keys don't change like they do with some of the more modern security protocols. And so therefore, once you figure out what that encryption key is, you can decrypt anything going across the wireless network. And in fact, in 2001, the WEP protocol was compromised, and now you can crack it with a standard PC and a wireless network card using off-the-shelf software scripts. In fact, I remember seeing an app for my Android smartphone that could crack WEP networks. So essentially, WEP is just about as good as open because anyone with just a few clicks can crack into your network and get at all the goodies there. Now, there are some ways to enhance the security, or some ways that some people think they can enhance the security of WEP networks. The first is SSID cloaking. You basically hide the SSID so the user, in effect, has to know what the name of the network is before they can connect to it. Again, this works for the most part, However, it is possible to actually send out a wireless probe packet that requires every access point that receives it to broadcast the SSID or to reply back with the SSID, not necessarily broadcast it. And so SSID cloaking is basically circumvented at that point. The next is by using MAC filtering. You write down all of the MAC addresses of all of the wireless devices that need to connect to your wireless network, and you only allow those workstations or devices on your wireless network. And again, that's easily circumvented just by simply figuring out what one of the allowed MAC addresses is and changing your workstation's MAC to match one of those allowed MAC addresses. So, as you can see, these are some ways that people say they can enhance the security of web networks, but when it comes down to it, there really is no security on web networks. Even if you hide the SSID and you filter out the other MAC addresses, it's easily circumventable all the way around. So we'll carry on with our discussion of wireless security and wrap it up in the next video.